Welcome to Clarity Dojo.
At the start, I would be like shaking. I would be in the back of the classroom. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to say anything. I'd be like the one that like no one would approach. Being honest and being blunt, because of how just like the lack of confidence. I think I was just kind of fed up with myself being like I'm more than this. I'm more than just being like the person who doesn't talk in the classroom, never raises your hand, never engaging. I really felt like there was just something like an instinct there. And I think people throw around that word of confidence, and it's like you either have it or you don't, but that's something that you can work on. It's not something that's just a weakness. It can turn into a strength over time. And I think when I started to believe that I could do something, that's where the drive came in, into like kind of putting that into action.
I'm inviting you to a workshop where you work on you. Work to connect to the best in the world to get clarity. Head over to claritydojo.com. You'll get the latest research techniques, examples, and it takes all of the guesswork out of which questions to ask in order to get the best insight. Get clarity and take action today. So Rachel Lynch, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with me today. Just a quick bit about Rachel. She is in college right now. She's at High Point University, and she leveraged her experiences through DECA in high school. So it ultimately climbed up the ranks and got to the North Atlantic Regional Vice President position, which really changed trajectory, and you kind of connected with the thing that you wanted to do through DECA. So like you were curious about it, and this organization, from my research, I have many DECA students in my program, and I feel like the DECA program and the DECA-minded student really connects with and is very driven to connect with the thing that they're passionate about, and moving towards a career. So I wanted to chat with you about that. So thank you so much. Right in the middle of the pandemic, how are you and your family? Is everything okay right now?
Yeah, we are doing we're doing well. I'm knock on wood. My family is safe. Everyone, my close friends and their families are doing well. I'm originally from South Jersey, Voorhees Cherry Hill area. But I was fortunate enough to spend most of the pandemic in Florida, actually. My parents are doing the typical like retirement to Florida gig. So yeah, I am currently in Florida enjoying the wonderful weather. But yeah, I've been taking up the time to soak up the sun.
Oh, that's such a nice place to be. Yes, it's not bad that the pandemic hit where we were within the year in terms of our region to be able to get outside and enjoy the weather. So that's amazing. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you started and kind of where that led you with your career path?
Sure. So I guess I'll start in high school. Everyone like asks you, oh, what do you want to do when you grow up? That kind of question is, I think, way too often asked, especially at a very young age. There were times where I was like, yes, I want to be a dancer, or I want to be a teacher. And it just, the minds and the career paths have kind of shifted over time. But there was a point about my sophomore year, the kind of light bulb went off, and I was like, I need to really kind of start thinking more seriously, and that's kind of what led me to join DECA. I wasn't a confident, I guess, young girl at the time whatsoever. I was always afraid of talking to people and a group more than one, but then fast forward a couple of years in DECA, I was speaking to crowds of over 20,000 at our international conference. Just crazy stuff. But going back, I was kind of at that point where it's like I need to make that change, and I really want to grow internally. So then I can again figure out that question that kept popping up in my mind and that people kept asking. So I joined DECA, and really DECA just opens the door for business, but anything you do in life is kind of surrounded by business. So whether or not you go in a career, the skills that you'll learn about communication and leadership, et cetera, will will be so useful and will take you very far. And then a couple different competitions and years. By my senior year, I was serving as a state officer for New Jersey. So we're about 10,000 DECA members strong outside the state of New Jersey. I believe we're sixth in the world right now for DECA, which is absolutely incredible. But my passion just grew, and I just kept exploring and talking to people. I think is like the best thing to do, because everyone's going to have some tidbit of information to share and lead you down another path. And actually in high school, I was able to connect with a local financial advisory firm to kind of explore what that meant and what kind of career path that brings. And I was working, after school, and just really learning from them as well. And then I was also a door open where I could work in New York in the fashion industry with Joseph Aboud, who's a menswear designer. And that also door opened through DECA, and it really gave me the sense of kind of where my passions led. I went to Eastern High School, and we have a really awesome fashion program there, and I always loved to sew, and I was always kind of infatuated with the fashion industry, and I was finally given this opportunity to really like be on the ground and see what happens in photo shoots and modeling sessions in that sense, and that really again spurred another interest. And yeah, so now I'm in college, and I have done little side jobs here and there, but I've kind of stuck out and wanted to play to my strengths. And I pursue an accounting degree, and I'll graduate May 2021 with a job lined up already after graduation. So exciting stuff.
Okay, my goodness.
A lot of stuff. I can ramble.
Have done some work in such a short amount of time. I definitely admire the work ethic, and I love working with people who have that type of drive. So I'm going to pause on that word right there, drive. So where's that come from? Like, I feel like the DECA mentality, is that like do you guys have like a coaching program or something that gives you that motivation? Like, where do you find your motivation and drive to take those, maybe you can call them risks, and be okay with it, and control that fear enough to move into, let's say, a leadership position? So how about that?
Yeah. Honestly, there was kind of like every time I would speak, or any time I'd walk into even just a simple meeting, like at the start I would be like shaking. I would be in the back of the classroom. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to say anything. I'd be like the one that like no one would approach, being honest and being blunt, because of how just like the lack of confidence. And I think people throw around that word of confidence, and it's like you either have it or you don't, but that's something that you can work on. It's not something that's just a weakness. It can turn into a strength over time. And I think when I started to believe that I could do something, that's where the drive came in, into like kind of putting that into action. But then, as you have already kind of witnessed, this kind of aura around people that are involved in DECA, you're kind of inspired by each other, because we're all very forward thinking and wanting to do something, even though we have no idea what we're doing. Just kind of that community of people, just keep moving forward and keep trying different things and failing at different things. It's definitely an instinct, but it's also, you're just surrounded by just very motivated people, even though at the start no one knows what they're motivated about. They're just like, I want to do something and I want to have an impact in the world, and just kind of like, let's see what happens from there. But I would say the people in the community, the atmosphere that DECA really like inspires, is where that drive initially came from.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely an amazing perspective to be. Well, a couple things there. Environment. So when you surround yourself with peers who, and this is a lot of times what happens in all levels of life. When you surround yourself with peers, a lot of times who don't know what they're doing and don't know what the next step is, but have good intentions and want to make an impact and just have that energy. things change. So I like that the DECA organization has that kind of environment built. So I definitely want to kind of dig into the DECA crowd a little bit and see more about the method to the madness.
Yeah.
And I think your initial comment about, being shy, but understanding that you can move towards confidence, and it's not a fixed mindset thing. It's the, something that could change. Was there something that inspired that or taught you that? Did you, read or did someone or an event occur that like gave you that confidence?
Yeah. Wow. Trying to think back of like if there was a moment. I think I was just kind of fed up with myself being like I'm more than this. I'm more than just being like the person who doesn't talk in the classroom, never raises your hand, never engaging. I really felt like there was just something like an instinct there that wanted, and then I had great mentors in my life, my mom being one of them, who would be the loudest person in the room, or like anytime she walked into a room, like it would change, like the dynamic in the room would change. And I wanted to kind of like tap into that, knowing that like I could become that strong woman that she is. And it's kind of funny, everyone's like, oh, my mom's my great, but yeah, it's true. For some people it's definitely true. But yeah, I think it's the internal drive, and it's I've talked to so many students throughout my 3 years in DECA, especially that final year serving as an executive officer. And as long as they have some type of energy, some type of spark within them, even though they don't know what it is, it's kind of like pulling them out of that shell to get them to keep moving forward, is kind of the key. Especially I've seen it within myself.
Wow. Yeah. The mentor thing is huge. Sometimes you're blessed with amazing parents. Sometimes you may be in a tough situation. I've listened to and read many stories of people from all over. So I was fortunate as well. My upbringing was solid, and the ability to connect with a mentor, I think, is one of those things that if you have the self-talk, like you were talking about, like,
Yes.
You have an instinct that you could be better. You have the self-talk of being fed up. I love that. It's kind of like, I sometimes learning takes place at the big lows. So like when you don't step up and you don't, speak up on when you can or should have, or sometimes you can beat yourself up, but eventually you do. Once you hit that fed up point, things start to change. And then that self-talk of just getting into the space of whatever room it is, whether it's a learning situation or a business opportunity, and having the energy. So I think that is a key. So having energy and like figuring it out and having the positive wherewithal to know what you don't know, and a lot of times you know a lot. You're the pro in that environment. You're able to kind of steer it in such a way that helps people. So fantastic. I think that was a great breakdown of kind of that moment, the shift.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I know. I think a lot of times, even just students at that level that I was at sophomore year, and looking at different people, it can be very intimidating, and it's like, oh, like I can never be that person. But it's small steps. I'll share that I played softball all my life, and I dance, and it's like you're always in a team, you're always around people, and there's always going to be someone better than you. But it's kind of seeing that, oh, they're not just better than me, like I can get to that point as well with hard work, and just kind of that light bulb switch, just like change the channel in your head, and that's really going to propel you forward.
Cool. Yeah. Team building, team sports, team activities. I think even if you don't do them formally outside of a school environment, it happens a lot in school. So yeah. I think people listening out there, that how you behave in those environments and what you learn from being parts of teams, and knowing, being okay with making mistakes, being, knowing that you may not be the best in the room, and
Yeah.
humbly accepting that, and still being able to act and do great things is part of the learning process. So outstanding. I wanted to just touch on some of the things that you noted. You were a part of DECA, and you had these opportunities, and you were able to connect with things that you were passionate about outside of school walls while you were still in high school, right? Yes. So I see this a lot. It's a very small percentage of students who are doing things like this, and this is the thing that this is why this podcast exists.
Yes.
So when you have an interest in something, and you can, how did you connect with these people? Like, what did that conversation look like? Was it through a mentor? You said it was through DECA, and then, a lot of times just being in an environment puts you in connections, and then you have to speak up and kind of grab onto those connections. So can you just tell me about the two internship things that came up for you?
Sure. So I'll start out with the Joseph Abood and the New York experience. So at the time, I was serving as a state officer for New Jersey DECA, and our state advisor, Dr. Jeff Victor, he also does a little podcast about DECA.
Cool.
He just was starting that up a couple months ago. But so he sends us an email, and he's like, so DECA, at the international level, they want to shoot a promotional video for a corporate sponsor to show throughout the year to get members excited for the keynote speaker at our international conference in April. So this is about August, and he sends that email saying there's an opportunity to shoot a video in New York. Who's interested? Within minutes, I'm like, I'm interested. New York, I'll be there. Like, I didn't know what I was saying yes to. I didn't know what this video was about, what it was for. Later on, those details came, but at that instant, he wanted 2 people, and I was like, yeah, I'll be there. So we traveled, took the NJ Transit into New York, and I found out that we would be interviewing and speaking with Joseph Abood. And at that time, I was definitely interested in fashion, but I never saw it as a career. I never saw, I was like, I wasn't very creative. I was never going to be a designer. I like to make clothes, but that was never like something that kind of entered my mind. But in that environment, I saw more. I saw the PR people. I saw the people, the communications, the behind the scenes, that I was like, oh, like I would love to be a part of that. And I kind of really just walked up to his main PR manager, and I was like, is there any opportunity to maybe job shadow? Like, I knew going into it, you need to kind of know like where you are. And at that time, yeah, I was a senior in high school, or going to be a senior in high school. There were no way that they would pay me for anything. I really just wanted to be there and watch and be that fly on the wall, but as well as that sponge of information to really cultivate from that experience. And she's like, yeah, shoot me an email. She gave me her card, and that night, 5 o'clock, I was typing up an email. And then months later, I was going in for planning meetings and modeling and styling sessions. And then I was able to go to Fashion Week. And then it just kept constantly opening doors. And then in June, I was doing this photo shoots for the collection that he put to the runway in February. And then that even connected me with people for the overall organization of Tailored Brands. They're no longer connected now, but it just, again, just talking with people and kind of putting yourself out there, but again, knowing where you are in what stage of life. So you're not over asking, you're not trying to get an internship or some formal experience. It can start very informally, like a job shadow, or just kind of talking about what someone does, but you never know where it's going to lead. And for me, it was very successful. It led to more and more opportunities of going into New York. But that was definitely one opportunity that DECA provided me. But then again, I had another internship that was more formal, more job related, with a financial advisory firm. But that was, again, my chapter advisor. So at the local level, my marketing professor, as well as a chapter advisor for DECA. She said there's someone in the area looking for assistance, for help in the office for day-to-day operations. And I emailed and I interviewed and kind of had that from there. So just really always on a sports field, showing up every day, like it's going to notice. So people are going to kind of reach out to you for those different opportunities.
Nice. Yeah. Wonderful. That was amazing. Showing up is one of those things, and sometimes you got to ask and open up. Job shadow is a great technique. That's something that I haven't heard of yet on our podcast yet. That line. So would it be okay if I shadowed you? Just job shadow, not overreaching your ask. So that's another etiquette kind of thing that you have to feel out until you have the credential of professional experience or the talent to be able to step into the role that you're maybe asking for. Sometimes people will want you for that role because of your talent, and you won't need the credential on the wall. So I'm not saying that people shouldn't ask and shouldn't be, but having the sensibility to ask the right way.
Yes,
so
exactly.
And lots of doors opening because you're showing up and you're talking to people. So amazing. And you said the one was not paid. Did you have a paid internship?
So with working for the financial firm, I was able to get paid, but everything that I did regarding New York was all like voluntary. But it was something that I was so happy and so thankful to do that many people don't have the opportunity to do just in that capacity. So I was like, I don't need to be paid. I just want to be, again, that fly on the wall and absorb as much as I can and really learn. And it was funny. One of like my favorite moments was being able to talk casually with Mr. Abood about just different life experience he had. He also has a book that I've read that was great to even read after meeting him and really understanding his story. But it was funny. We talked about the favorite pizza places. He was a Red Sox fan. I was a Yankees fan. And I remember a couple, even into college, we were watching I believe it was the playoffs before the World Series, and I saw him on TV behind home plate during one of those games. But it's just, again, that connection that really can, again, just keep showing up and keep being the best version of yourself in different situations, and doors will keep on opening from there.
Yeah, well done. Really cool. Awesome. So I want to celebrate those things again. My 10 to 20-year-old audience is kind of where I think, because I talk to, my daughter's 6, and we're not yet talking. We do talk a little bit about career, but I talk to a lot of young folks out there, and just that is one of those questions that I ask. What are you thinking about, maybe as a career, as you when you grow up, quote unquote?
Yeah.
And I think that that your experience speaks to that audience so well. You can get job shadowing opportunities, internship opportunities when you're very early on in your high school career. It's much easier when you have a license and you can drive, or if your parents are okay and you're mature enough to do a public transportation thing, or if your parents are taking you places. I don't know how much earlier that you can do that kind of thing, but I'm seeing, I watched, Gary V, and we see some very young folks getting on that have that entrepreneur, go-getter mindset at a very young age, and they're connecting with people who just by, reaching out and saying, hey, I want to learn. So, and getting paid even, with an internship at that level. So great, amazing stuff. Is there anything out of all of your experience, any favorite insight or insights that you're pulling away?
I think the best thing to at a very young age in high school, you're going to be that sponge that I keep referring to and just kind of always learning more. But I think the best thing is just, even if you don't think an opportunity or you don't think a person or a situation might be specifically geared towards you or your interest, to just have that open and open mindset to just kind of learn from people. Oftentimes, even if I am in internship opportunities and I have the capability to do and learn from different people and attend different sessions, and that I do it. That is very vague, but to give a specific example, throughout this past year at college, I got an internship in October, but that was very early for the recruiting cycle for the following summer. But I didn't like that wasn't it. That wasn't my ending point. That like the goal and what you're working for is to get an internship that turns into a job. But once that happens, that's not where it ends. Like you continue to want to learn, kind of that lifelong learning mentality. And you never know who you're going to meet. So that I was still going to info sessions on my college campus just to learn people and kind of meet people and see how our worlds are interconnected, because there's a lot to learn. So even if you find something and carve out an opportunity, just kind of continue to learn from people, and to continue having really awesome conversations, because you can learn no matter what. And yeah, that would be my continue to be hungry for information.
Cool. Do you have networking tips, like techniques that you use? Anything that you could share?
I think now in this day and age, LinkedIn is huge. Even as a high school student, it's funny they stress so much if you walk into college your freshman year and you don't have LinkedIn, like create that LinkedIn profile. But I had one in high school. I was just kind of intrigued and I started. I mean, DECA, they're always gonna stress LinkedIn, but I think that was a huge thing, just kind of that starting point, that kind of little insight into what the world out there is looking like. As well, I attended a university. We were huge about informational interviewing. So kind of similar to job shadowing, where you're just kind of learning and on the job, on the ground. Informational interviewing is kind of one of those buzzwords that are really becoming kind of like a thing nowadays, where just send someone a message on LinkedIn, or if you have an email or a phone number, and just ask different questions like what's your day-to-day looking like. If you could tell yourself a piece of advice from when you started the job search, what would that be? And I really learned a lot, and talked to a lot of really interesting people. For example, in accounting, I talked to someone who started at PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big four accounting firms. They now work at Ralph Lauren. I checked up on their LinkedIn, and now they're at Gucci. So it's like just having those different conversations and tracking and then kind of following people where they're going. People love talking about themselves, so like ask those questions and get those people, successful people, to talk. And that's, I think, one of the best networking tips that I've really kind of worked on, and again, continuing those relationships. One phone call isn't the end of a relationship that you could have with someone.
Yeah, well done, well put. And I think that's a lot of what this podcast and course. I have a free course that's on our website, claritydojo.com. So students can go to claritydojo.com, sign up for a free membership, and you can take. There's 2 courses on there. One's a goal setting course that'll email you weekly just to kind of alert you, hey, have you set goals?
Yes.
And goal setting is one whole. Can be a whole conversation.
Yes.
But I think more so, there's a course called Career Clarity, and the whole course is based on connecting with mentors and connecting with people who are doing the thing that you want to do. So I love the information interview that is that essentially is what the course that I have put together. I have a bunch of template questions, very similar to the questions that you had, like, what would you recommend me to do? What was I love that, you mentioned in your job search, what would you tell yourself back then, now? So this podcast kind of models those questions. Like, this is one of those information interviews, and it's a quick free sign up for anybody that's listening to our podcast right now. If you check out claritydojo.com, that's why this podcast exists. I'm just trying to prove to 10 to 20 year olds maybe that you can set up these types of Skype calls, and I think it's very easy. I think everybody is doing that because of the pandemic.
For sure.
people are understanding the ability to have this type of video conferencing. And this is how you can really open up doors for your interests, and it springboards, and you follow somebody, and eventually they get to Gucci where you want to be.
Yeah.
And because you've been talking to them for a while, you can shadow in that environment and that kind of thing. So awesome tip. Thank you. Let's see. We got maybe we can model some of those questions that I recommend students to ask. How about this one though? What resources do you recommend for people who are like hungry for learning, maybe a specific niche resource that you're using, websites, books, podcasts, anything that you would like to mention here?
Yeah, sure. My dean of my business school, he puts out kind of like a list of books every week. He's a huge reader, and then inspired me to start kind of crafting that professional library. I know in school, I just taught, like, if I was a high school student and someone told me to read a book, like, I probably wouldn't read it. I've been like, I'm already reading books for class, like, I don't have time, and that kind of thing. But I mean, especially now, like, utilize all this free time to start reading. And I think I kind of started on like Goodreads, looking at different books, and obviously there's like the popular ones everyone recommends, like the 7 most effective habits of Seven Habits of Very Effective People, or the one of how to it was like, how to gain friends and influence people. That one, like, just different ones. And I think a lot of the resources that I've been given were from different mentors. But it's really, and honestly, just like Google, like find different things that work for you and kind of inspire people. And they don't just have to be successful business people to give you kind of insight. I've been listening to this podcast. It's called Whoa, That's Good, by Sadie Robinson. And she similar to this, she asked successful people, what's the best advice that they've been given. And I feel, just as a 20-year-old, I feel like I don't have an answer to that question yet. But eventually, like, I probably will once I kind of experiment a little bit more. But if she asks Sean Johnson, a gymnast, just really awesome people. And that was been one that I've been listening to every week now in quarantine. But yeah, it's definitely something I want to develop. That's like one of the most popular questions that people ask. But again, I don't think I've explored it much yet that I need to start. But a lot of what I've done is really based on instinct, surprisingly enough. Not just like reading something and being inspired and acting on it. It's really come internally, but it's definitely something I want to work on as well.
Cool. Well, yeah, those are 2 great books that you mentioned, yeah. And I haven't heard that podcast yet, so I will definitely check that out.
Yeah.
I was inspired by Tai Lopez, the guy in the garage with the Lamborghini. When my daughter was on the way, I did a ton of reading and just trying to what would be the best way to set her up in terms of, financially. And, we did a lot of research, ultimately getting into real estate. That's another business that my wife and I operate. So that, Tai Lopez was kind of a springboard for that. So Ty's got a book list. So, you could probably Google book lists and then famous people talk about books. So that led to like a lot of reading business type stuff, Charlie Munger, Berkshire Hathaway boys, those guys, and just a ton of amazing books that are really easy to peg down on a list. And you mentioned Goodreads. Goodreads is like a summary website where it's like a subscription based thing where you can pay and they give you like audio where you can listen back, and it's kind of like a summary of books. And then if you want the book, you can dig in. I'm a huge fan of Audible. Like I listen all the time when I'm driving to appointments. My commute to work is really short, but people who are it's great for a commute or a drive. It's great when you're in the gym. It's great when you're doing yard work or chores, that kind of thing. So, I peg down books like crazy, and it's all based on this question. I ask my friends, or I kind of gather this professional library, and I love how you put that too, where you're kind of assembling these things that are tools for thinking. So when you don't know what you don't know sometimes, and when you're surrounding yourself with these amazing mentors in the form of books, that's another thing that I can't recommend enough to students. Is like, hey, I put quotes on the wall. Here's the author. Read the book.
Yeah.
And it's that motivation, it's that spark, it's that energy that you were talking about.
Yeah.
You pick it up from other people. So when you surround yourself with that kind of stuff, awesome. So we'll shift. How about this one? Favorite like success and maybe favorite failure?
Sure. I'll start with the failure. So when I started, well, I'll even go back. I want to say, I think in middle school you can take an exam to be placed into like starting to learn a language early. And I remember taking that exam. I was like, okay, language, like I've been to France a couple of times, like I want to learn French, like I was super into it. But I apparently failed that exam, did not get placed into that class to start learning languages. But all throughout high school, all 4 years, I took French. And then when I got to college, I was like, yes, I wanted to be a French minor. When I was working at the JASCO group, one of my supervisors, like, he's like, you got to learn a language, you got to have that. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna learn French, I'm gonna continue with that. But after 2 semesters in college, I learned so much, but it wasn't something that was sticking. And it's kind of not necessarily a failure, but a point in time where it's like I needed to step back from it because I was kind of putting way too much time into something that wasn't becoming fruitful, where other things I could put more time in, and kind of get that return on your investment, that kind of thing. Yeah. So no more French, but it's definitely still a passion of mine, and kind of, and the skills that you learning a language, just kind of not just memorization, but really kind of diving deep into it, and kind of that cultural surrounding is something so valuable to continue on with your life. So even though not graduating with a French minor, French major, like it was still a great experience. But again, having that not sense of completely giving up, but kind of stepping back to realize this is not something that I should be putting all my energy into, where I'll get a better return elsewhere. But then I guess that'll lead into one of my favorite successes. I would say becoming an executive officer for DECA. It was really one of those experiences that I felt like I kept falling into these different experiences that really were so beneficial to me. And throughout that year, I surrounded myself with my team, my executive officer team of 5. And I was the only girl on that team, so a very interesting dynamic. But the people I served with were so talented and inspired me even more than just the members. And then traveling to different conferences and talking with different people, and realize that I was starting to make an impact about the people and that I was starting to make that impact, and people were starting to look up to me. And then just like buzzwords like, you're my role model. And then a girl, she just rushed the fraternity that I'm involved in, Alpha Kappa Psi, which is a professional business fraternity on campus. She's like, I actually met you in an elevator at a conference in Massachusetts. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. Those different instances. That was definitely one of my biggest successes, just of how overwhelmingly positive that experience was, and how much that really shaped who I am today.
Wow. Yeah. Amazing. You have you've gone a long way, lady. And
in a short time.
I think what you said about instincts, your instincts are serving you well, and you taking those steps and opening doors and connecting. And one thing that you said as well in what you just said, serving. So I think that having that service mentality, a humble mentality, and the ability to having the courage to step in and just be a part of the energy of the room is a great starting point. So I guess we'll end with the talking to our audience. If you were to talk to this 10 to 20-year-old audience, the people that you bump into on the elevator, who they're curious, maybe their self-talk isn't great. Maybe they're fed up. Maybe they're just on fire and they want to learn something and they want to be a video game designer. Or they want to be an artist or a musician or whatever it may be. But they're just unsure how to do it. What would you say to that person to get them to go from on the fence to in the game?
Yeah, I like that. Off the bench into the game, that kind of analogy. I honestly, there's so many different directions and so many different things that you can explore. But again, how it started with me, it starts internal. It starts with your passions and kind of exploring that and what those passions and possibly what those strengths are. It's kind of cheesy, but I've taken so many personality tests and different things like that, just kind of like figure out myself. It's so hard to like learn about yourself, but it's something like take time and kind of explore yourself. But then my main thing that I would kind of suggest is just keep moving forward, whatever direction that may be. It's definitely discouraging if you're at a point in your life where you're just like, I don't know what the next step is. I don't know how to get there. I don't even know, like, I don't know anything like that glass door is opaque right now. Like I don't understand. But just keep moving forward, whether it's having a conversation with someone, whether it's kind of putting in a little more effort into doing your schoolwork. It's just continue moving forward, because I think more clarity comes with that, instead of just kind of accepting where you're at. Just kind of having that mentality that you can change your circumstances, whether they may be negative right now or maybe they're completely positive, but you want to kind of explore more of who you could become. Just kind of that keep on going, keep on moving.
Outstanding. Rachel Lynch, you are going places, and I can't wait to see where you're going. If any of our audience members maybe want to look you up or connect, what's your best social channel? What do you recommend?
Yeah, definitely look out on LinkedIn and maybe create your profile for the first time. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, the Rachel Lynch. But even just type into Google Rachel Lynch, DECA, I'll pop up, and probably an email address too. So yeah, definitely get in touch. I'm happy to talk and happy to have those different conversations. It's definitely something been so useful for me. So I'd love to be a resource for you.
Amazing. Thank you, Rachel. Well, it's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
We will definitely be in touch, and I look forward to see all the great things that you got going on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care now. Head over to claritydojo.com. You'll get the latest research techniques, examples, and it takes all of the guesswork out of which questions to ask in order to get the best insight. Get clarity and take action today.